Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Anglo Election Insights, where today, just doing a quick preview of WA's state election, which is coming up at the end of this week on Saturday, the 8th of March. As a side note, I'll be streaming with Aussie Select live as the count comes in. We'll probably start from around 9 p.m., 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and we'll just stream until most of the results have come in, I suppose. So be sure to check that one out. The question here is not sort of will Labor win, it's more how much will they win by. It's very clear that the Liberals aren't going to achieve this sort of 25% swing that they need to actually form government. And the upper house will be interesting to watch as well. This is WA has adopted a nation first model of kind of a New South Wales and South Australia style proportional upper house, but instead of splitting it into half elections, they will elect all 37 members of the upper house via proportional representation, which means the quota to get elected is only 2.63%, I believe. So we'll definitely a chance for some minor parties to perform quite well, even some fairly sort of small and insignificant minor parties. And just a note, I'm not like an expert on WA, whether it's the demographics, their sort of state politics in general, or the geography of the state. So just want to put that out there. And as a result, I'm not going to be making like specific predictions or anything, but just kind of previewing what's going to be important to look out for in this election and what we should be keeping an eye on and what the implications might be in terms of federal as well. So as far as the issues go, the ABC have put together this cool little article which basically goes through some of the promises made by each party, and really we've got housing, health and education. So pretty typical state government fare. This is an election. This isn't about COVID politics or anything like that, or it's not really even about ideology. The Labor Party in WA is very centrist. They're very pro-mining, very sort of awake to the fact that WA is a resources economy, very much. Well, that's how I understand it anyway. So this election is going to be fought on service delivery by the looks of it, and essentially what it looks to me like is that Labor are focusing on the Perth metropolitan area, whether it's the train lines or whether it's schools or health upgrades, that sort of thing, whereas I think the Liberals and the Nationals are looking more at the regions and outer metropolitan areas. So for example, with the housing policy, Labor are looking more at sort of density and social housing, whereas the Liberals are looking a little bit more at public infrastructure like water and sewage and that sort of thing, going out to greenfield sites. And in terms of like health, you've got, I can't really call them the coalition, can I? But we'll call them the Conservatives. They're looking more at upgrades to regional hospitals and that sort of thing, whereas Labor is more focused on emergency response within the Perth metropolitan area. So it gives you an idea of where the priorities are. And on that note, I think the metropolitan versus regional and rural divide is going to be an interesting one to watch, and how that actually goes in the electoral landscape on the night, because as we can see from the 2021 landslide Labor win, they took some regional seats with them too, and they have had a long history of holding seats like Geraldton and Albany down here, and especially like Kimberley, Pilbara, all those kinds of areas where, you know, very resource economy dominant. So the one kind of area where perhaps Labor does have some weakness is in the regions, whether it's, you know, the sort of halo effect of the live sheep export ban, which federal Labor has implemented. That's not been good for the Labor brand just generally in WA with the graziers, and things like the Aboriginal Heritage Act as well, which has since been withdrawn, but that caused a lot of problems when they were looking to get that one through the parliament, from what I remember. So if Labor has pissed off anyone so far, it's been those in the regions. And just on that as well, some of those seats didn't swing as hard to Labor in the 2021 elections. So the question really becomes, does that mean those seats won't swing back the other way as hard this time, or does it mean that maybe a bit of a softening of Labor support out in the regions was covered up by a landslide sweep? The other thing that's happened this week is the leaders' debate, or last week, where there wasn't really a clear winner, but I think the general consensus was that the Liberals' stock increased a little bit, probably because of the low expectations that people had for leader Libby Madden. All right, so we'll kind of discuss the state of play a little bit. So firstly, just Poll Bludger a week or two ago just reported some news as far as what has been leaked internally from Labor. So they're pretty much written off these six seats here. So Nedlands, I'm sorry if the pronunciation's wrong here, by the way. I've only read these names, but Nedlands, Careen, and Churchlands. So that's very much kind of inner Perth, very affluent. And then Warren, Blackwood, and Kalamunda. So the seats that are more, a little bit, I think Kalamunda's more kind of like Perth fringe, whereas Warren, Blackwood is down in the southwest, like Margaret River way. And then also seats they're quite nervous about: Kingsley, Scarborough, South Perth, Albany, Geraldton, and Kalgoorlie. So a mixture of seats kind of still within that sort of Tangney, Curtin, Federal area, metropolitan Perth, where there's these more kind of blue ribbon areas, and then heading out into the regions with Albany, Geraldton, and Kalgoorlie. So that would, if that all plays out, that means Labor will be losing, what's that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 11 seats right there that Labor are internally quite worried about, apparently. I think in terms of the Liberals' strategy, though, they're not looking to form government this election, but they probably are looking to take back a lot of this kind of oceanfront heartland. So seats like Nedlands, South Perth, Bateman, even down to sort of Bicton and into Riverton and Jandakot on a pretty good night, but then heading north from there, Churchlands, Scarborough, Careen, Kingsley, Hillary's on a good night. So if they can sort of take back that sort of blue ribbon, affluent heartland area of Perth, that's a good night for them. A couple of seats on the fringe they'll be looking for as well. So something like Kalamunda and Darling Range, they'll be keen to get back. Probably not Swan Hills or Wanneroo though. Huge swings to Labor back in 2021. And then some of these regional seats. So Geraldton, Kalgoorlie, they might have stuffed it in Albany with the Liberal candidate, but the coalition will still have hope of making gains there. Certainly Warren, Blackwood, and perhaps even, like Murray, Wellington, Dawesville, some of these kind of Mandurah, Bunbury areas where they didn't swing as hard to Labor last time round. And then on a really good night, maybe the Pilbara and Kimberley could be seats that they target, but probably not this time round. So that gives you an idea of where to watch for. So again, it's that sort of Curtin, Moore, Federal area, and then down in towards the seats overlapping with Tangney, which if the Liberals are quite strong there, it might give some indication of what we can expect at the federal level. But the other thing to watch is also outer Perth, whether it's these kind of more northern metropolitan seats that overlap with Curtin, or these fringe seats or like Perth fringe seats in the hills that overlap with Bullwinkle. That could give us a bit of an indication. But the real key to Labor's sweeping victory was the huge swings that they achieved in outer metropolitan Perth. So it'll be worth watching out for whether some of these seats that are sat on margins in, the mid to upper 20% range, whether the Liberals can kind of get them down to something more like, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8%, something that they can target going into 2029. So that's more or less it for the lower house. I'll just discuss what certain other commentators have been looking at in terms of their expectations. So Kevin Bonham looks like, so if we're looking at a two-party preferred statewide result of somewhere in the mid-50s to the mid-40s, so like 55, 45, 56, 44, something like that. We're probably looking at something like 17-ish seats for the coalition, or the Conservatives, I should say. So Kevin Bonham's saying if we have a 55-45 result, Labor will be back to 41 seats, down from 53 currently. And then if we go to a forecast, they are saying similar kind of thing, maybe a little bit more bullish to the coalition on the two-party preferred there. They're saying more like 54-46. But in terms of seat totals, they're looking at 22 and down as low as 36 for the ALP, which that seems a little bit bullish for the coalition. The Conservatives, pardon me. But it just goes to show that, there's a bit of a difference of opinion there. I think just going through some of the betting odds, looks like the coalition, well, I guess that means either Libs or Nats, have shortened a bit in Albany, quite short in Bateman. They've shortened in Bicton as well. Corrine, these kind of inner Perth seats looking pretty strong for the coalition. Dawesville, Limeball, Geraldton, the coalition have come in a bit there. Even in Hillary's, which I think they're probably only winning that on a really good night. Jandakot, that's probably a bit more realistic. Limeball in Kalamunda as well. Favourites in Kalgoorlie, Kingsley. It'd have to be a good night for Kingsley. Same with Mount Lawley. If they're winning a seat like Mount Lawley, they're probably going to end up with like 23, 24, 25 seats between the Liberals and Nationals. No real surprises here. Yeah, Pilbara, okay, so Labor's still very much favourites there. Seats like Riverton and Scarborough might be a bit more line ball. And then South Perth, yeah, they're coming into real favourites there. So nothing particularly exciting on the betting front, I would say. Finally, just looking at the upper house, back in 2021, there's no real comparison because WA used to have a Victorian style, I think it was 6 regions, and they've now changed that to the statewide proportional representation model with the really low quota. So there's 13 groups, including a grouped independents, and then 12 parties running. It's kind of difficult to know how it's going to look, because we don't know what the extent of the swing against Labor will be. From a primary vote of somewhere near 60%, I would imagine it drops to something more like 40, and that would probably get them to about 14 seats. The Liberals and Nationals between them probably looking at 13 or 14, maybe even 12 on a bad night. The Greens 10 or 11% primary gets them to about 4 seats, but there are a chance at 5, particularly if the Labor primary drops a little bit more. So if my base case is Labor 14, Greens 4, which that would together that's a majority out of 37 seats, and then the Conservative Party's looking at about 13, which would leave 6 more seats. And the main contenders would be Legalised Cannabis, One Nation, the Libertarians, Animal Justice Party, Shooters, and the Australian Christians. And I thought that a better way of trying to gauge where support could be for these parties would be actually to look at the 2022 Senate result in WA. So here, Labor 34.5, Liberals 31. I expect both of those numbers could be a little bit lower, especially the Liberals, because the Nationals will run a separate ticket this time. The Greens at 14, I'm expecting that to potentially be a little bit lower with some other left-wing parties on the ballot. But then One Nation, Legalised Cannabis, on those results, they're both clearing a quota, and if One Nation have a swing to them, they're potentially looking at a second. The Australian Christians at 2.17, that's probably more than enough to secure a quota on preferences. There won't be a UAP, but if the Libertarians, formerly known as the Liberal Democrats, are able to get somewhere around 2%, they'll probably win a seat too. And then I would expect Animal Justice to poll a little bit better than that. I think they will clear like sort of 1.5%, and any, maybe a bit of Greens or Labor surplus could be enough to push them up into a quota as well. Sustainable Australia are running as well. They have actually polled, so they've got poll position. So they're at the top of the ballot, but the ballot paper is not going to be that huge. So I don't really know if the donkey vote's going to be of much use to them, particularly because it's an optional preference vote system. So a lot of contenders for those last few quotas. It'll be interesting to see how many parties are able to achieve one, and if any of them, like particularly Legalised Cannabis and One Nation, actually are able to get two seats. But we shall see. Again, I'm not going to make firm predictions, but just going to watch on, just hoping that this video has given you guys an idea of what I'll be looking for, and what the implications might be depending on how things pan out. So thanks for watching. Remember, we will be live streaming on Saturday night, a little bit later if you're over in the East because of the time difference. And I look forward to seeing you guys there. Thanks for listening. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and it's giving you value. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and please comment your thoughts below, particularly if you're from WA, if you've got a particular read on a particular seat or a party, or you've got something a little bit more insightful from what I can tell from my humble abode in Western Victoria. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.